Hello all, hope you're doing well. In today's video, I'll just be going over the week 6 scenarios. So let's just jump right into it. The first scenario, we have the owner of the bowling league database, Carl, who recently had a storm catastrophe and is worried about losing data. So he basically just wants a data backup plan to run at the end of each night and uses the lowest amount of disk space. So the best plan to implement at this point would firstly to fully back up the database. Performing backups is a precautionary measure that you do have to take to prevent data loss. We will then perform a differential backup every night to back up only the parts of the database that have changed. So this is a good method because it only creates a copy of only those parts that have changed. So it doesn't use a lot of disk space when it comes to the backup. Its speed is advantageous, and like I said, it doesn't take a large disk space as the backup is potentially smaller than a case of a full database backup. The recovery plan I would suggest to choose would be the bulk logged, as it supports full and differential backups and reduces log space usage by minimal logging for most bulk operations. This will avoid filling up the disk space. In a case of a catastrophe, if log is damaged or bulk operations occurred since the most recent log backup, changes since that last backup must be redone. Otherwise, great thing is that no work is lost. However, point-in-time recovery is not supported, but the data can be recovered to the end of any backup, which is essentially what we need for the scenario. All right, just going to run you through the demonstration. For the first query, it'll just basically give us the recovery model that we're using for the bowling test. Right, so over here, it's still currently in the full recovery. So we just need to change this to the bulk logged. Run the query again. And there it is, bulk logged. All right. So now that we've changed that, I have already performed a full database recovery, just so you can see. Over here, we have the bowling test and the bowling log backup. So that's great. We have our full databases backed up already. Sorry. So now, throughout the day, Carl decides, okay, we need to have bowling ratings. So we decide to add the first, sorry, I need to test. All right. If we run this again, it should work. Oh no. Okay, great. 2 errors affected. And throughout the day as well, he decides, okay, no, we need a team spirit bowling rating. So he tells them to add, and there we have 1 row affected. And if we select just to see everything that's in that table, we see here that it has been inserted successfully. And at the end of the day, the differential backup runs. So over here is the backup. I'm just going to run this just so you can see that code over here. And over here, we see that it has successfully run the differential backup. So now Carl, once again, changes his mind. The next day, he's like, no, those ratings aren't necessary. We need to delete them or take them off the bowler rating table. However, he entrusts this on someone who's not so familiar with the delete statements, and they forget to add a where clause. So they run this full delete statement, and it affects basically all the data in that table. Now, Carl's having a panic attack, so it is time for the DBA to come to the rescue and perform a restore. So if we come here to the view and tasks, restore database, we'll see here that we have the full and the differential backup. Make this come to files. That's the files in which it's getting the data from, the files that I previously showed you. Options, we're just going to tick override the existing, as well as close any existing connections to that database. We script this. I'm just going to run this restore already. All right, so it's done. Over here is what I've scripted. So we'll see here it makes it single user. So basically just closing out all those connections, running the restore, and then setting it back to multi-user. If we come here and select everything, just to see if we have that data back, we see here great stuff. We have it all back. Now Carl sets this assignment to someone who's actually familiar with the delete statement, and they've added the where clause to delete those 3 inserts of team spirit, team player, as well as the most improved. Execute that, 3 rows affected. If we just double check that, we'll see that those 3 bowler ratings are now deleted. Great stuff. Let's move on to the second scenario. For the second scenario, we have a CIO who is basically concerned about the data loss, and the company is growing at a fast rate, so he just wants the basically worried about the IT and with the data that keeps coming in, that it is protected at all costs. So the best plan to implement at this point would be to firstly fully back up the database. Like I said previously, performing backups is a precautionary measure to prevent basically data loss. But also because of the current situation, performing a constant transaction backup log, this could be an hourly backup log, or depending on how data is often stored or manipulated. The transaction log backup helps with complete and constant coverage because its form of backup contains all changes of a row that has been modified several times since the last backup. Therefore, it's not a backup based on the physical parts, but rather on the log operations. So the full recovery model best suits the situation because all transactions are fully recorded in the transaction log. It supports full and transaction backups, which are able to facilitate the recovery of all the data with 0 or minimal data loss, which is thumbs up. It's fantastic. It also can recover to an arbitrary point of time. For example, if someone is trying to delete the row, however, forgets the where clause, a recovery can be made to a point in time before the delete was executed. All right, so if we go to the demonstration, for this demonstration, I did create a new database for the Wild World importers example. And here you'll see the code that I used to create that database, as well as I set it to a full recovery model. I then created a table, the products table, for the product code, name, price, and unit price, and the case price. I have already performed a full database recovery for this. So if you just come here, if I go there, over here, we'll see here the Wild World importers example that has already been backed up. Oh, I already created a T-log, by the way, but I'll explain that further. All right. So I have already inserted 2 insert lines, and I've already created a backup log file, a transactional log file. If we see here, we select from all products. Sorry, forgot to select everything there. Okay, we see the 2 products that I've added. All right. And then I decide, okay, or they decide that they need to add more products to the product list, or products that have basically arrived in the country, depending on the situation. I will run then another insert statement for the health vial. Great, one for affected. We're just going to get the time, because we are going to use the point in time, which I'll explain. All right, and we're also just going to add the chocolate halfa as well. Execute, great. Get the timing for that one. All right, and also the almond halfa. Execute to run where affected. Just get the timing. Copy that here. Okay, lovely. So then we decide, oh, okay, no, we need to, first going to perform a backup log, but because I have the statement over here already, we don't need to go to the GUI, we'll just copy that and we'll place it over here. We're gonna run everything, or actually this one. Okay. Oh, but by mistake, we forgot to highlight and it affects all the rows. So now we have duplicates. So just to see that, okay, so now we basically have duplicates of pretty much everything. So we're just going to run a delete statement, or rather we can actually, okay, we're not going to run the delete statement instead. We're going to now use the log backup to basically restore to point in time. So in this instance, I'm going to restore to the point in time where I had added the feta Greek cheese over here. So that point in time was this one here. Just going, I don't know if I can highlight it, but just so you know, I'm going to run it back to this point. If we come back to our GUI here, restore the database. So as you can see here, let me just make this bigger. These are all the transaction log files. But instead of just restoring everything, we're not going to do that. We're going to restore to a point in time. So I'm going to take my timeline. It's going to make this smaller. Okay. Okay. Timeline. Okay. I want to move it. All right. Yeah. Okay, there I have my time right there at the top. So I'm going to select specific date and time. So the 10th, October 25th, right? The time I did that was, this is 10, so I did that at 9:24:42 p.m. Okay, just so I've got that correct. Say okay. All right, so going to override existing database and also closing connections. We can just script this to see what we're doing. So over here, we'll see what's basically going to be happening when we restore this. All right. We click OK, moment of truth. Okay, great. It has been restored to that point in time. Now let's go verify. If we now go and select, okay, I'm sure I have a select statement up here somewhere. Okay, select everything from the products. We execute this. We have successfully backed up to a point in time where we've only had the cheese. So now in this instance, we're going to make sure that we don't duplicate anything, and we'll run the select statements. Sorry, we'll run the insert statements. Apologies for that. Okay. Hopefully it ran those. And then if we select everything, there we are. We now have the halvas in the product list. All right, and then we can also just perform a backlog on this one and select it this time. So that is basically how we can use the backlog model as well as the full recovery model on these two scenarios. Thank you so much for listening.